Hey everyone, and welcome back to the show. Today I'm excited to do a short little episode on what I would do as a non-diabetic if I want to get started tracking my glucose or just simply having an understanding and awareness of it. I would say some of these things also apply to you if you are diabetic, pre-diabetic, but these are some of the things I first did when I first started getting serious about wanting to learn more about my glucose and like understanding my body. And I feel like that's key. Like understanding your body is so important, like how you feel. I'm just very in tune with my body and how I feel and what makes me feel a certain way. So these are some simple tips in most cases on how to get started and a little insight into like how my brain works. So this is probably not everyone's, story, but every time I sit down for a meal, whether I'm at a restaurant, at someone's house, at a party, the wheels in my head kind of start turning like, okay, what's in the room? What's available? How can I make this blood sugar friendly? Like that is first thing that comes to my mind when I'm around food. And just because everyone around me is eating a certain way doesn't mean I feel pressure to, doesn't mean I have to eat that way. So in certain cases, okay, maybe there's like literally nothing available but pizza, right? I mean, hopefully there's like a side salad or something. Okay, so it's not like I am so caught up in it that I won't eat certain things. I mean, that is, a different problem. But if there's a variety of things available, I'm like, okay, what's here? Like, what can I work with? I probably went into that situation with, eating something at home that helped keep my levels pretty stable. But in these cases, it's important to start navigating them in a way that's going to make you feel good. So in my family, we have several dietary preferences and restrictions because of various health concerns. And over the years, it's often like, okay, guys, this is what we're going to make for these people, and this is what we're going to make for these people. And if you don't want that, we also have this. And I honestly feel like it's a little backwards. Outside of the gluten intolerance, there's some salt issues and things like that. But I think we really should all be eating in a way that supports vitality and long-term health versus like, okay, you guys are going to have this like super carb heavy meal, but you guys over here get this because you have something that requires you to eat a certain way. And the way a lot of people eat today, especially, in these bigger group settings, and I get it, like it's expensive, but it just makes it really easy for disease to creep into our lives. It's not because like we mean for it to, but the way our culture around food has shifted, it really is shifting towards disease. And that makes me really sad. And obviously, if you're in those situations, you just make the best of it and then move on. But so I'm recording this right after Easter, and it's top of mind for me because a lot of junk made its way into my house, and it has made parenting really difficult. It's not like I'm an unfun parent, but I need to set boundaries, and I'm trying to teach my daughter. Obviously, she doesn't understand because these things are marketed to be fun and look really appetizing to children, and so it's very hard to go against the norm, really. And just because it's there and it's available to buy and it's what everyone does doesn't mean it needs to end up in our Easter basket or whatever it is. You can make a homemade version of something. Like I've been really loving that gluten-free chocolate chip banana bread. That's blood sugar friendly and there's no garbage ingredients in there. And it's also fun. It's joyful. It helps with the celebration, and it's not like giving into this culture that we've found ourselves in where I don't even think people realize their blood sugar is out of whack. I mean, at some point, if you're eating all this sugar and unnecessary additives and things, your cells aren't going to be making energy the way they should be, and it's going to affect your glucose and insulin and like a whole host of other problems. So reasons why non-diabetics should be paying attention. I mean, that's what we're going to talk about today. Maybe not reasons, but like how to get started if you're like kind of curious and you want this awareness piece, right? I think I do a lot of reading and a lot of research, and I'm aware of a lot of things. It doesn't mean that I immediately take action and I change every single thing. I mean, it's a slow process. I still, even like 5 years into being like a crunchy mom, I guess you would say, like I'm still like switching things and learning and growing and evolving. So I think it's an awareness piece. You're curious enough to listen and want to learn, and then eventually these things are going to trickle into your everyday life. And maybe you will be walking into a restaurant thinking, man, what am I going to eat today that's glucose friendly? I don't know, maybe someday. So today, some things I want to walk through, like why you should start being more mindful of your glucose, even as a non-diabetic. Some of the steps I first took when I first started tracking or had that desire to know what was going on in my body with my glucose. Some hard truths that I think some people need to hear if you really want results and you're kind of at the point like, okay, I kind of know what's going on in my body and I know I need to make a change. So, what do I do now? And, I talked about the Easter stuff, and it's not like about complete restriction, but I do think that everything is hard, right? When we want the results, it's not like, okay, we didn't just get there overnight. So to reverse things back to health isn't necessarily easy. And then just, how we can approach this in a sustainable way without feeling restricted or extreme. And part of that, I think, is that awareness piece. So I think let's get into the episode. I know you're curious, and let's start talking about some of the things that I did when I first started tracking my glucose. I'm Katie, and welcome to the GLUCOSEGLOWUP show, where I'm making blood sugar balance for non-diabetics not just important, but actually fun and approachable. I'm a girl mama, problem solver, wellness advocate, and someone who turned a deep dive into metabolic health into real-life results, like healing my insulin resistance and unlocking my fertility journey. This podcast is your backstage pass to everything I've learned, and I'm still learning about glucose, longevity, how to beat your cravings, and stop feeling hangry. Why does this all matter? Because when your blood sugar's in check, everything just feels better, from your mood to your energy and overall health. Here we'll talk about glucose tracking, eating for balance, optimizing your health, fertility, navigating the healthcare system, a holistic approach to wellness, and biohacking your way to feeling amazing for years to come. I'm in the trenches right alongside you, working daily to manage my own glucose and have more energy for the things I love. So whether you're ready to kickstart your health, deepen your understanding of how food impacts your body, or just want a relatable space to learn and grow, you're in the right place. Let's get glowing. Okay, why you should start being more aware or mindful of your glucose. When I first started taking my blood sugar seriously, it was about 5 years ago, and some of you know, that was around some unexplained infertility, and, my fasting glucose was slightly elevated. It wasn't like flagged pre-diabetic or anything, but it was 96 to 99 between there, like kind of consistently over a few months. And I was just kind of thinking, wow, that's kind of weird. And then my insulin was around 7, which again isn't flagged as terrible, but ideally you'd like it at 5 or lower. And, I realized I had no idea what was going on inside my body day to day. I just assumed if you didn't have diabetes, you didn't need to think about glucose. I got those screenings, biometric screenings, for insurance and stuff like that over the years, and everything was always fine, right? But now that I'm like way more aware of what's going on in my body, I have I have a really, really good sense of like when my fasting glucose is a little bit higher, maybe like higher 80s or whatever. I'm like, okay, what happened yesterday that caused this? Like I kind of reverse engineered a little bit. And I think that, that takes time to get to that point. But I think just having an understanding of, okay, this is something I need to be aware of. And it's like, here's just like a few reasons why, we should be a little mindful. Large glucose spikes and crashes just cause a whole host of problems. And for me, like top of mind, I mean, even if you're not ready to have kids or you're never going to have kids, like impacting your fertility is a big deal and it's a sign of health. And so there are studies out there showing that women with unstable glucose control can take longer to conceive than those with more stable levels. And so this was a study I was reading recently, and basically, if you have a large variance in your glucose day to day, you could take months and months longer than someone else to conceive if that is something that you were trying to do. So from a fertility standpoint, there's a lot to say, but that was something that really stuck with me. And on top of that, blood sugar swings just like wreck your mood, your energy, focus, your skin. I mean, it contributes to a whole host of problems. And I just think tracking your glucose is empowering. I mean, how many of us track other things like our steps, our sleep, workouts, heart rate, how far we ran, things like that? Why wouldn't we want to be tracking, food and kind of how we feel every day? So I think it's just, again, being mindful of your glucose, mindful of how your body's feeling. I think these are just really important things to start thinking about, especially if you're like curious about this. Okay, let's talk about some of the things I did when I first got started. And this is what I would recommend if you're curious or want to start being more mindful. Check your labs. I would hope many of you are going to your annual physical and you're getting some really basic labs. So your basic labs are not going to have a fasting insulin, which is kind of sad, really. I mean, it's pretty important. But anyways, you're not going to see fasting insulin unless you are diabetic. I'm not even quite sure what they do with all that. But I would look at your fasting glucose, and if it's above 85, and if you have multiple records, that's even better to see, is it trending higher every year you go in, things like that. If it's above 85, I would for sure consider tracking at home with a glucometer. Now, I will say here, you don't necessarily need to get a glucometer right away. I think there's other things you can start doing right away before you even do that, because that to me feels maybe a little scary or intimidating. But I think number one, like knowing your numbers is really important. And there's other labs you could be looking at too, your cholesterol, triglycerides, things like that. Your blood pressure, I mean, that's not a lab, but that's something else you could be looking at too. But I would look at your fasting glucose if you just need like one take-home message here for that. Then I started just being really consistent with food. Breakfast, for example, I kind of started with breakfast, and I just found a breakfast I could put on repeat. And I'll use right now for an example. I mean, I did this before, but a protein shake, especially for me, I know I'm getting my protein and some other good stuff in there. And when I get interrupted in the morning by my daughter or whatever it is, like I still know that it's there and I can like keep sipping on it. But it's important to find a breakfast, number one, that you enjoy, and number two, that keeps you full and satisfied without feeling hungry or hangry in an hour or less later. So find your go-to breakfast, and that's not going to be a blueberry muffin or that Danish or whatever bagel from the bakery. I need it to have protein, fat, and fiber, and then, you can mix in some carbs there that are hopefully low glycemic. So just find that breakfast that is your go-to, and and just keep it on repeat. Maybe it's a couple of them. Like I also love over easy eggs, avocado, Ezekiel toast, and then Good Culture cottage cheese. That's like another staple. Like find one or two and just keep it on repeat, even for like a week or two. Kind of the same, but always pair your carbs with protein, fat, and fiber. So just eating that blueberry muffin, well, one, it's got a lot of sugar in it in addition to the carbs. When you just eat the carbs, it's being released into your bloodstream a lot faster, and so you're going to see a very steep increase in your glucose. And if you can metabolize it really well, in the beginning, it probably will come right back down. But if you kind of do this on the regular and it's been, let's just say even decades or 5+ years, you just like start the day with carbs, fast, refined carbohydrates. I mean, your body over time isn't going to be able to metabolize that as fast, and that's where insulin resistance comes in and things like that. So we don't want to be eating naked carbs right away in the morning. Another thing that I did, I kept a food journal. I still do. And so I'm writing down my fasting glucose. I'm writing down what I'm eating when, if I exercise, if I went for a walk, things like that. And then, like, how do you feel? How do you feel after eating the muffin versus eating a protein shake that's full of protein, right? I think you'd be really surprised once you start to like tune into your body. Like, okay, I don't really feel that great. Or in the afternoon, like, what does your snack look like? So another thing that I did was I really got strict about snacks, and I didn't really limit fat. I went like high fat and protein and kind of limited carbs, especially in the afternoon, because I felt like that's when I always wanted to grab something. I will say, when you want something sweet, another thing that I did was, like, I made this, like, keto coffee cake, something that, like, was sweet, but it wasn't affecting my blood sugar very much, so you could go that route. But in the beginning, it was, like, hard-boiled eggs, cheese, meat sticks, walnuts, almonds. I wasn't reaching for chips, crackers, things like that. And I didn't eliminate all carbs. I wouldn't recommend like going full keto or anything like that, but just being really mindful. Like, all right, do I feel energized after eating this carb heavy snack, like reaching for the chips and salsa? Or is it better if I just like have a little bit of energy with the almonds and cheese or whatever in the afternoon to just get me to dinner? I want you to just start thinking about how you feel and snacking smart and just being really intentional with what you're eating, because going back to like tracking, you'll be able to see like, okay, you'll start to see patterns and maybe you don't even realize what you're consuming. So something to keep in mind. And then if you are like, all right, I'm going to get a glucometer, or I have one, like I'm all in, like tell me what to do, I would track my glucose for at least 2 straight weeks, like the fasting glucose, just to see. I mean, because in 2 weeks, like maybe your sleep was really crummy or you got a cold or whatever. Like a lot of different things affect that. Maybe you weren't as hydrated, so you can like make some notes and stuff like that in your food journal and see what's going on and just kind of see where the opportunities are to improve. And that's again like another level, like being able to analyze and figure out like what adjustments you need to make. So I think starting, I just really wanted to know like what's going on like for 2 weeks. Like just show me the data, and then like from there you can start building on and adding in new habits. Okay, some of the tough stuff, being aware of your glucose and making any sort of health changes. There isn't like some magic bullet or a pill you can take or, overnight results. It's going to take time. And if you're listening, like I think you probably are already curious and maybe want to make some changes. Even if you don't have a problem, maybe there's still some adjustments you can make. And so for me, it was around the 3-month mark when I started seeing like really consistent good numbers. Again, I wasn't tracking insulin, but I was tracking glucose. And, I'm still learning things. I mean, even just last week, I started adding this magnesium supplement, which I'm going to talk about hopefully soon on my email and a new podcast. But I saw a reduction in my fasting glucose levels consistently after like a few days. So don't discredit taking action and then seeing small mini wins, right away. It's, of course, in 3 months you could see a really big change, but I think it's those mini goals and those mini wins that come up and you're like, well, that's pretty cool. And like for me, it like keeps me motivated versus like, okay, in 3 months hopefully something changes, right? But I think like we kind of need to be real with ourselves when we start talking about glucose. So we live in a culture where, alcohol, going out to eat a lot, going to the bakery or the coffee shop, processed snacks. I mean, everything is really convenient, right? It's convenience is the game. And I question convenience a lot too. Everything in a package, or just like, okay, like what's really in here? And can I make something else at home? And I'm not saying like you have to be absolutely perfect or you can't have fun. But the more you incorporate some things like that, it's going to be way more difficult to see changes. So looking at your food journal, I want you to shift your mindset a little bit. I don't want you to be like, well, this sucks. I can't have pizza every Friday like I used to. But I want you to like look at your food journal and be like, okay, where can I make improvements? And then think about like, okay, I'm actually choosing foods that help me feel energized, vibrant, and in control. Like think about like what those goals are for you versus like, well, now I can't go out with my friends and have drinks on Thursday or Friday or Saturday or whatever it is. You can, but I think I don't really drink alcohol, but I do know that when I do have a drink, I lose a lot of control of my hunger cues. And I think it's easy to overeat and it's easy to get in a rut with your glucose. So that is like a really tough one. And I think going back to like the morning bakery, it's like kind of a cultural thing that we have here in the US, which is sad because it's putting us in a bad spot for the rest of the day. And then we are always busy, and then we go for the processed snacks or something that's packaged because we're too busy to make something, or we can't have something that's refrigerated. And I just think trying to be more intentional and just not feeling like this sucks, but more like I'm choosing this because I want to feel a certain way. Just some final thoughts. If you take one thing away, I just want you to know you don't have to like completely flip your life upside down and be like so obsessed with your glucose to see a change. Awareness is just a really powerful thing, like just being mindful of what I'm consuming and when and how I'm feeling. You don't even have to know the exact numbers right now. If you were just curious about this, you can just start to tune into your body and still realize that progress is possible. You also don't have to make these crazy adjustments like I need to go full keto, I need to cut out carbs. Like that is not true. Go back to my last episode where I'm talking about glucose misconceptions. That is not the case. Your body needs carbs, fat, protein. You need all the macronutrients. Don't be putting limits on that. And I wouldn't even put a hard limit on healthy fats. Your body also needs those. I found that to be really, really key in managing my glucose levels. So just being mindful, planning a little bit ahead, paying attention to your body's signals is just so important. You can enjoy life, holidays, family dinners, and still protect your health. I think we just need to start looking through this through a different lens. So thanks for tuning in today. And if you have other questions or follow-up questions about like how can I get started or a little bit more specific about what I did, like feel free to shoot me a message and I will be happy to walk you through that. But until next time, keep on glowing, everyone.